Welcome to this webinar of the Regenerative Collaborative South Africa called A Regenerative Future. My name is Marloes Reining and I'll be your facilitator for today. It is our anniversary webinar, so we're going to do things slightly different today, but we'll keep you entertained anyway. Today's webinar, very exciting, our 5th anniversary of the RCSA, and I thought I would start off the talk a little bit with a bit of a background of the RCSA and how we got started and where are we today. So it was probably in 2013 that I heard Jason McLennan speak at one of the GBCSA conventions about the Living Building Challenge, which really sounded like a dream rating system for a green building consultant. And it was really a system that wanted to push the boundaries. The Living Building Challenge is one of the most stringent building certification systems in the world. And so I decided I wanted to be part of that. And in 2015, I became a Living Building Challenge accredited professional and then applied to become an ambassador for the ILFI in South Africa. And for a while, that was quite a lonely position until Tulani came to the party, and as there were 2 of us at that time, we could start the Living Future Collaborative of South Africa. And the purpose of that collaborative was really to spread the word around the Living Building Challenge and to create a community around the philosophy of buildings like the Living Building Challenge and around buildings that do more than just good. And the ILFI was supporting us with a network and a platform and all the resources to do this kind of work in South Africa. So as part of that, we started our first event in 2019, which was called Truth in Action. And it was actually an in-person event. And we did it in Pretoria and in Johannesburg. And it was very well attended. I think we had over 100 people in person at both events. And it was great to see that there was a lot of interest into the topics that we were presenting that day during that event. And as we were brainstorming for our next event, COVID hit, as we all know, which initially paralyzed us a little bit, and we didn't necessarily sure like how are we now going to go further, how are we going to do this. But soon thereafter, we started doing webinars like everybody else, but we stuck to them, and we kicked off with a webinar about net positive energy, very quickly followed by a webinar around net positive water. And before we knew, we were hosting webinars on a monthly basis, and we were actually enjoying it a lot. So in 2021, August, we had to rebrand to the RCSA as the ILFI was dissolving their collaboratives globally. And I'm not going to go into detail why, but they basically let go of all their collaboratives. There were many of them all over the world. So that was a bit of a disappointment and a little bit of a setback for us. But then we decided we were enjoying, this journey, and we decided to rebrand it and continue as the Regenerative Collaborative of South Africa. We continued our monthly webinars, and we really created a group of amazing volunteers, which has made this organization a true joy to be involved in. And we're now doing this for 5 years. And as part of this milestone, we also have done some rebranding. We got a volunteer who's very good with design and websites. So we have a new website, new colors, new branding. So we are going into 2025 with a completely new, colorful look. So the story behind our logo, I think I was explaining it to the committee 2 months ago, and they didn't know. So I'm also gonna tell the story here. The logo is a dandelion. And the idea behind it is that just like a dandelion disperses its seeds across vast distances with the wind, an idea or initiative can spread and take root in various places, leading to growth and transformation. So our logo, the dandelion, symbolizes how the RCSA wants to inspire widespread growth, scattering ideas wide and far to foster a regenerative future. So I thought that was really a nice background behind our logo to share with you guys. So some insights on our webinars. So far, we've done 46 webinars. Some of the most popular ones were the regenerative design of human ecosystems, energy performance certificates, Sandstand 400 XA, if that can be interesting, but it was one of the most popular webinars, and introduction to biomimicry. One of my favorite ones was one of the latest ones on creating a natural home, I think, or crafting a natural home, as we called it. That was really one of my favorite ones. It was just such a beautiful house to showcase. But then also, in terms of location, I think this is what we really wanted to do with our dandelion, not just touch lives of people in Gauteng, as we are based in Gauteng, or most of us are based in Gauteng, not all of us, but also touching everybody in the country. So it's really nice to see that there's a really widespread of locations of attendees that are attending our webinars. And obviously, most of them are from Cape Town, Johannesburg, and Pretoria and Durban. But when we were throwing our full attendees and registration list into ChatGPT, he counted 421 cities that people attended from, and 79 countries. So even though we're thinking we're sticking to South Africa, we're clearly global, a global movement. So what's next? So what we really want to do in the coming years to create a movement and really a network of like-minded individuals and networks and organizations, and really create a network around a regenerative future. We definitely really focused on sharing local and hopefully more maybe African local and not just South African, and showcasing and sharing and networking with the African context. And we're just going to keep going. We love doing these webinars, and we still have a lot of topics that we want to discuss. So we're just going to keep going on these webinars. So expect 11 more next year. And then we're going to shine with our new website and branding. So just a quick sneak preview of our new website. I'm just going to run through. It's not up yet. We tried to have it up by today, but we'll have to wait a little longer, probably in the early new year. But just to show you like a sneak preview of, you can join us, like it will be a lot easier to connect with us through our website, some information and some sponsor opportunities, and hopefully this will draw some more sponsorship to the organization. And who are we? This is our team, the directors, me, Adele, and Tilani. And then we have an amazing team of people and volunteers that keep this going. Milan, even though he's in America these days, he's still contributing to the social media, together with Pumla, who made the website and came up with this amazing new look. And then we have Amy, who's doing all the video editing, making sure that they're actually coming onto YouTube. Adil, who's helping me with the speakers and making sure everybody's comfortable and on time and know what he needs to talk about. Bosa and Janice, who have been helping me with the CPD validation and admin behind it. And Lizette, who's been with us for a long time, helping us with the sponsorship. So guys, really amazing work. Thank you a lot for all the work you're doing for us. And then, yeah, that's the last page, you know, where to connect and reach out to us. Cool. And with that, just the usual, you know where to find us on YouTube. That's not changing. Our YouTube channel will be where it is, and you can still find us, and we'll still be uploading our videos there. Follow us on Eventbrite, LinkedIn, YouTube, and like us there. That really helps us with our sponsorship as well. So the more likes, the more sponsorship. And as I mentioned earlier, we are a volunteer organization. So if you want to help us out, even if it's an hour a week with the admin or anything else you're a superstar in, please reach out to us. Okay, today's webinar, today's speakers, the title is A Regenerative Future. So we gave our speakers this time a little bit of a challenge. We gave them a topic. We sort of wanted to hear from specialists in the industry about a different lenses around a regenerative future. So we asked one of them to talk about technology on engineering, one on architecture, one on cities and nature-based, one on transport, and one on waste. And then we gave them the other challenge that it's only going to be 10 minutes. We gave them 3 questions. What does a regenerative future look like? What is the challenge and what is an opportunity in that? And make a bold statement for the future. They get a maximum 5 slides and they have to share us their vision. So not everyone stuck to this guideline, but that's totally fine. But we are going to stick to the 10 minutes. Otherwise, we're not going to get through all of them. So I am going to keep my timer on. And you speakers, you are warned. And we're going to start off with Andile. I'm going to introduce them all. They all have very lengthy bios, but I'm going to shorten them to give them the opportunity to make the most of their 10 minutes. So first up is Andile. He's a very experienced urban development strategist, specializes in integrated planning and urban management, and currently leads the Rosebank Green e-mobility pilot project in collaboration with key public and private partners. Andile, your time is starting now.
Thank you very much. Thanks. In terms of a vision, there's, well, 3 parts to my vision, actually. And the 3 parts are that you see on the first part, on the left-hand side. We've got a trend that we are on. We're Africans. Everybody on this call is aware where we are in the world, politically, physically, and there's a big social movement. Post-94, this is where we are. We're beginning to not only decolonize, but to re-Africanize. I say re-Africanize because it takes more than just leaving our past behind. It's about reinterpreting ourselves as we've become this that we are. So there's a whole range of initiatives around that, around Agenda 2063, where we are asserting ourselves. Agenda 2063, please Google it. It's the African Union's vision, and the tagline is the Africa that we want. Poses 2 very important problems for us as I say Africans and South Africans in particular, is that we need to decide who we are. We are a real mix and a diverse society experiencing itself in many different ways that are challenging. And then what do we want? We were very clear what we wanted in 1994, a liberal, a democratic society that looked after everybody and that began to look after environment. We put a whole lot of laws in place. 30 years later, the world has changed and we need to reinterpret ourselves again to say, what have we become? Is this still what we want? And make up the new thing that we want. That's the first one. The second one there is we are also very interesting as a society because we're a society of rule breakers who bring about a new order. And I've just cherry-picked some of the prominent characters in our history in that part. All of them, they follow a very similar arc of hardship, of struggle, of being quite contemporary for their time, working through hardships, wanting to make an impact, and then for a whole range of reasons being viewed positively and negatively as things go in South Africa. One of the biggest challenges of being South African is wondering what is good and what is bad about South Africa, because it's all happening at the same time. I must apologize if they skew, the leaders I've chosen here, they skew African, they skew male, and that's literally because of who I am. There are many more, and this is just a selection of people who've wanted to and have made a big impact on our society in different ways. And then that last part is quite important for me in particular, and this forum, because I think a growing value in South Africa is us wanting to have a just, green, and a developmental continent and country. These are some of the values that are core to who we are. It's something that has been clear about throughout my career, through many people that I've worked with, through all the lenses, a lot of people demonstrate these values, and they approach development, they approach transport, all the different sectors with these values that are very much part and parcel of who we are. So that's my vision. Then we jump into the problems. And my problems that or challenges, is literally the apartheid city. I'm a town planner by training, and the apartheid city is a creation that segregated peoples of different types. It's a man-made creation. And what is interesting about it is that in the 30 years post-1994, I believe we had a very clear vision of what we were trying to do at the beginning of this journey. And we've lost a little bit of that. The apartheid city still needs to be overcome. And in separating people in space, we've created transit deserts, or transport poverty is what I talk about. Not only do we have the triple challenges that we've got of unemployment, the triple challenges that we've got transport poverty, which is now people cannot get around. And what is transport poverty? It's limited transport supply, not only because people are living far away, but it's because the normal development of a city was inverted. The poor people are living far away. They cannot get to the places they need to get to, especially off-peak times. That means that they're not able to get to opportunity as well. But there's also the issue around the options. There aren't any transport options. The different modes of transport are not there. And because people don't have options, they've got mainly minibus, sometimes bus, sometimes even less so rail. Because the options are not there, that also reduces the ability or the things you can do with your life. And this has a negative effect on people's health, job prospects, and economic mobility. Why is this important? It's important because if we think about the apartheid city was set up to do exactly this. The apartheid city has got a lasting legacy where it robs people of time and excess disposable income. Why these two are important? Time, because when people have time, and this is a general human trait, what they tend to do is that they take time to develop themselves and make themselves better. And when they've got excess disposable income, most people tend to invest in the next generation. These are the two things that the apartheid city specifically targeted in the local people and in people who were then oppressed by apartheid. Moving on. Now, how durable is this cordon sanitaire? So the first picture shows you Soweto. And basically Soweto, we're looking at a part of Soweto where you've got, that's going to be our focus area, but you've got the different suburbs that were separated by race. Areas that were formerly white, areas that are colored, and the physical spaces in between the different race groups. This is exactly how apartheid planning was done. It was illegal to do anything else. Next slide, next click, please. In the second slide, basically we can see the different land uses. Industrial, the cordon sanitaire, you had to put a highway, an industrial area, or a vacant space, any physical feature, a mountain, a valley between the different races. And then if you see the transport, which is now the third panel that we've got there, the transport routes are literally trapped into these opportunities that are there. Nothing has really changed in time. This is why transport is very important, because transport can overcome in the interim whilst we build better cities, whilst we infill and find more creative ways to get over this. We can now begin to move people across in a much more democratic way. And when you do an analysis of walkability, you find that the greens, which are very highly walkable areas, are those areas that are in the suburbs that were separated by race. But the cordon sanitaire is the oranges and the reds, the areas that are impenetrable, which remain vacant and will remain vacant for a long time. This is what we're talking about. My big prediction is this. It's on-demand shared new energy transport enabled by legislation, compliance, and digital reporting will bring affordable transport to overcome transport poverty in South African cities. Let me cover the first four. The first part, on demand, is literally on your phone. It's going to, on demand, is much more responsive to the needs of people. The technology is here. The majority of the population are already doing it. Shared because we've got taxis at the moment. That's the one shared mode that we've got. Ubers have come. The e-hailing has come on board, and e-hailing has widely grown. Bolt, we've got InDrive. We've even got taxis through Shesha program who've hopped onto, or who've acknowledged at least, that there's an industry around shared. Then we've got new energy, which is basically electric and green hydrogen they're talking about, and transport, different modes of transport. All of these things are different modes. We're looking at micromobility in particular. There's people are exploring with smaller and smaller modes of transport that are beginning to take place. Why is this important? This mix of modes, how you get it and how you can share it, brings down the cost of affordable transport. And an important layer, which anybody who deals with the green sector, the GRC, ESG, legislation, compliance, and reporting, which has to be digital, is going to be the answer. So let me stop there. And I hope this was great.
Well done, within time. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up, Linus. We have Linus, and while I'm talking, he can pull a slide up. But next up, we have Linus, an environmentalist and expert in waste and energy solutions, combines his chemical engineering doctorate and leadership expertise to drive sustainability through previous roles at Dark Waste and currently as managing director of Green Cap Consulting. Take it away, Linus.
Cool, thanks, and thanks, Andile. That was a great first presentation. I certainly learned a lot. As part icebreaker, part test if this is working, and part see whether I should post any spoilers or how many spoilers I can post. Okay, the vast majority of you have not seen the movie. It was like one of the 2 movies I actually went to watch this year at the cinema. I used to go every week. But if you know me, you'll know that I'm a big fan of superheroes. So noting that more than half of you haven't watched it yet, I promise I won't post any spoilers. I will say this though. I love the dandelions. By the way, I didn't know that you were rebranding. It seems that cool that you have kept the dandelions. But when I hear regenerative collaborative, when I think regenerative, I think of the 2 regenerative mutants, which I know, which are Deadpool and Wolverine. And in the recent movie which came out, they actually had to work together. Now, in trying to bring some sort of message through, their worlds were ending, right? Their worlds were literally ending. And despite not really liking each other or not having much at the beginning, they really had to share a common purpose and a common goal. So they managed to save their worlds by collaborating and working together. The one thing I'll say here is that Wade Wilson's mission was to always matter. And that brings it to what we're talking about, matter. Waste. Waste is matter, and we're throwing it away. My vision, I started writing a vision, and it's tying in the concepts of recycling and sustainability and circular economy. And I looked to the internet for help, and I found this, which is absolutely beautiful. I'll read it out very quickly. A society where materials are designed, produced, and consumed in a way that minimizes waste generation, with a focus on reuse, recycling, and sustainable practices. Perfect, right? Effectively eliminating the need to send any waste to landfill or incinerators, achieving a circular economy where resources are continually reused and recycled throughout their life cycle, essentially a world where every product is designed with its end of life in mind, promoting responsible consumption and minimizing environmental impact. That's from a world without waste. That's actually the sustainability policy of a company. I'd like to give you a moment to tell me which company you think that is. I'll wait for a few responses. I'm watching the chat as well. No, NetBank, good one, the Green Bank. Bain Consulting, Microsoft, Pick and Pay. Okay, that's good. Please keep them coming. Hey, somebody got it. It's Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola produce 3 million tons of plastic a year, and they somehow have the best vision for circular economy. I think that kind of highlights the challenge which we have, and this is the challenge in my opinion. The challenge is how we consume. It's our consumptive habits. That's a graphic from my industrial symbiosis textbook showing essentially how we interact with our planet. We extract, and at every stage of production and secondary consumption, we have an opportunity to close that loop and recycle and achieve a more sustainable economy. Unfortunately, our supply chain has become so complex. So you're eating a chocolate and you're divorced from the fact that you don't know where that cocoa came from. It probably came from halfway around the world, probably in Ghana, probably from child labor. And at the same time, we're in this overly consumptive space where it has become normalized to overconsume. Tomorrow is a typical example. Tomorrow is Black Friday, right? We're going to find that what used to be an opportunity for retailers to clear old stock is now an opportunity to just produce more and waste more. We develop these tools like social media to keep connected, and in the end, they end up controlling us and telling us what we want. So now we think it's normal to just buy a new output every single day, or buy something new and have 10 different orders delivered every other week. And that's not actually normal. And we're divorced from the fact that that actually comes at a cost to the environment with the amount of waste we produce. Now, currently, we're at about 7.2% circular. That's not good. It went up to about 10% during lockdown because we slowed production. We really need to fix that, and that is what the challenge is. Now, it's not all bad news, but before we go there, I want to highlight a key challenge here. So we're talking about waste now. So how much post-consumer waste goes to the informal sector before it's actually recycled? Just where do you think it is? Cool. So most of you think about 50%. The answer is actually more than 80%. It's closer to 90%. 90% of waste, post-consumer waste at least, goes to the informal sector. The point I want to make here is that it's crucial that we integrate the informal sector into whatever plan which we have. And there are solutions out there. So what are the opportunities? Currently, right now, the INC, the International Intergovernmental Negotiating Committee, is meeting in Korea. This is the final installment of a 2-year meeting program to come up with a global plastic treaty, the aim of which is to eliminate plastic pollution by 2040. That is a massive, massive undertaking. But it just emphasizes the fact that there are going to be lots and lots of collaboration needed in areas, in regions, transnationally, regionally, across the globe in implementing schemes, one of them which might be EPR, to mitigate plastic pollution. The other one is more local, and that's on organic waste. So there's a prohibition target of sending waste to landfill. Again, this requires coordination between different departments of local government. So land use really has to talk to zoning and needs to talk to policy to make sure that there are enough facilities out there to handle the organic waste and they're permitted and licensed, which is honestly where the biggest challenge is at the moment. My closing statement, I had 2 over the next 5 years. One, I'm predicting and I'm hopeful that the Global Plastic Treaty will be published and signed. Measures will be enforced to end plastic pollution. One of those, as I mentioned, is EPR, but noting here in Africa at least, that if we're going to do this properly and correctly, we will need to integrate the informal sector who are responsible for the collection of so much of that end of life. When it comes to organic waste, I'd like to predict that the other provinces will follow suit of the Western Cape and ban waste from landfill. And I'm going to make one more recommendation. Now, I didn't know this, Marlus. I didn't know that you had already rebranded. I was going to suggest that you rebrand. And I even had an idea. I mean, the dandelions are great, but I thought that Deadpool and Wolverine are the regenerative collaborative. And yeah.
I should have hired you as my designer.
Yeah. So, well, you guys can vote now if you want to.
Thanks, Alice. Excellent on time. Thank you so much. That was very good. We are not going to rebrand people. Maybe in 5 years' time.
You've already rebranded, right? I didn't know. Awesome. I do love the dandelions, though.
It's a good story, though. Eh? Anyways, thank you for that. Let's move on to the next one. Up next, we have Liteboho Makhele. She, just for people that we met each other 20 years ago. We shared an office while we were still very young and naive, working for the CSR. But the good thing that came from that is that we became friends and sustainability champions in different parts of the industry. So Liteboho is a sustainability specialist and program manager with 20 years of experience that started at the CSR, coordinates the Natural Resources Stewardship Program at GIZ South Africa, and contributes as a Salzburg Global Fellow, mentor, and academic moderator in sustainable urban development. So, Liteboho, floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Marloes. And I'm really happy that we've sustained this advocacy and initiatives in sustainable development for the many years that we've known each other. Thank you so much for inviting me, and congratulations to you all in the Regenerative Collaborative on your 5-year anniversary. Many initiatives and gatherings don't last this long, especially having to withstand COVID. So congratulations, and onwards and upwards for the next 5 years and beyond. So yes, we live in a country with a complex tapestry of contradictions. And like Andile mentioned in his presentation, we've got very glaring disparities that define the lives of the haves and the have-nots in the country. And yet, amidst all of that, I think we can still dare to envision a future where our cities become these dynamic ecosystems where natural and human systems co-evolve and coexist in harmony. So what if we integrate green infrastructure such as urban forests, wetlands, rain gardens to address the many challenges we face, like the current water crisis in Gauteng and other parts of the country, like the flooding we see increasingly in places like KZN and Johannesburg, Pretoria, you know, so many issues that we face, urban heat islands and pollution, while at the same time we foster healthier communities, we promote equitable access to resources, and we enhance urban diversity. So that's the vision. And Singapore offers a global example of what is possible, particularly in a developing country context like ours. Of course, they didn't have 5 years to do all of this, but they started just over 60 years ago in 1963 through incremental steps and sustained commitment to a shared vision. And today they have transformed into a country, into a city, because they're both, where nature thrives amidst their skyscrapers. Their story should remind us that bold visions are achievable, even in the context of developing nations like ours. And that if we get into the mode of doing persistent action and collectively coming together and having the will to achieve this shared vision, it is possible. We've mentioned this, Andile mentioned this complex tapestry of contradictions. This image, I think, is now very popular and very relatable to a lot of people. It comes from the Unequal Cities series, which really shows the disparities in our global South contexts, where we're grappling with historical, spatial, and economic inequalities, but then also grappling with rapid urbanization and population growth. And in this narrative, cities and nature are too often seen as adversaries. So it's this either or narrative that if you expand cities, you cannot have nature integral to that growth. But I think there's a positive approach that we can look at in the sense that, yes, on the negative side, as our cities grow and expand, we have habitat loss, we've got declining biodiversity and reduced ecosystem services like climate regulation, which impacts us a lot. We see when we have floods, we see when we have droughts and water crises. But at the same time, we can look at it in a positive way and start reframing and imagining and regenerating our cities in a way that they can contribute to the preservation of biodiversity and become drivers of sustainable development. As Singapore has shown, this is possible, but it requires sustained vision and action. And it also stems from maybe a limited understanding, this negative narrative of how we can value and put a cost to the ecosystem services that nature provides in our urban planning developments and plans. And then we can see us trying and be able to redress this inequitable access that we see around green spaces and nature-based solutions. And this can be particularly beneficial in marginalized communities where they are most at risk due to the limited access and availability of the ecosystem services that could help mitigate some of these shocks and stresses that they face. There are solutions that are already within our grasp. For example, there are cities around the country that are doing amazing work. We've got eThekwini, which is doing critical riverine cleanups, and they've got a riverine management program where they're transforming the river systems that are the lifeblood of the city and provide livelihoods to people. They're cleaning them of wastes, they're clearing them of alien species, and making sure that the communities around there are involved in that work and they take ownership and then benefit, of course, from the restored health of these rivers. There's some examples in Cape Town as well, where the city supports community-based food gardens for food security and resilience. And these are thriving and being upscaled in different settings across the city, particularly also in marginalized and vulnerable communities. There's the city of Joburg as well that has various urban roof gardens and urban agriculture initiatives that help mitigate flooding in some areas, that provide food security, and also build enterprises around nature-based solutions and the green economy in different ways. So what can we do within a period of 5 years? And that was the challenge that we have been given by the Regenerative Collaborative, to come up with ideas of how we can do this. I think we can do more in the next 5 years to advocate for policies that prioritize nature-based solutions in our urban planning space. There are many of you that might sit in very influential spaces, whether in your own capacity privately as urban planners or architects or engineers in this built environment space, or whether as officials in cities or as community-based organizations, representatives, etc. So we can really advocate for policies that prioritize nature-based solutions to address the many challenges that we face. And then if you're sitting in the corporate world or in a funding organization, we can encourage investment in community-led regenerative projects. And this community-led approach is quite important, because that's where at the local level, at the community level, the risks and the shocks and stresses that come are mostly felt. And if we can do this incrementally, perhaps one day we will be like Singapore. And then we can do more to foster collaborative partnerships, much like what the Regenerative Collaborative South Africa is doing. We can build cross-sector alliances to look at how do we finance, how do we scale up innovative initiatives, where can we pool expertise and resources together for maximum impact. You know, these are actions that will not only transform our cities, but would position them as catalysts for other cities, whether it's in the region, in the Southern African region, or whether it's continentally across the various parts of the continent, to also put South Africa as a beacon and a light that shines, you know, for others to follow suit and copy. That's my final slide. So what's the bold vision? We've got some pressing and persistent challenges that we face. I don't see our informal settlements going anywhere in the next 5 years, but they can certainly be different in the next 5 years. I look at the next 5 years as our cities having pioneering nature-based solutions as approaches to address challenges that we face, from the water crisis to the housing challenges we face, climate resilience, against flooding, etc., and waste management, like Linus was talking about. You know, there are so many areas of intervention that can be done. So my vision is that by 2029, in 5 years' time, we'll have a model 50% of urban spaces that integrate nature-based solutions in one way or the other. And that would reduce urban heat island effect by 2 degrees Celsius, because we are warming at even over the 2 degrees global average as South Africa in this part of the world. And then we'd cut flood risks by 30%, no more crying in KZN. And then, of course, job creation is important to us because we deal with the triple challenges of poverty, unemployment, and inequality in the country. So that's me, Marloes, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Thank you, Liteboho. I love it when you give people 10 minutes and they stick to it. Awesome. Thank you so much. All right, on to the next. Francois. Francois, owner of Sow and Reap, is also one of the early movers within the green building industry. He's a mechanical engineer by training, and he specializes in modeling and simulations to understand, improve, and recognize the sustainability performance of buildings.
Thanks, Marloes. Right, so this is going to be a very uncomfortable presentation, and the first part may be uncomfortable because I'm going to encourage you to close your eyes for a second. Picture a world with limitless renewable energy. Try and generate an image. What will you do with it? So this is what I did when Marloes asked me to envision a regenerative future from a perspective of technology and engineering, right? So I took my visions and I had, as I do, I had a long conversation with artificial intelligence, so we can switch over. By the end of our conversation, this is where I ended up, right? I landed on Zephyra, a planet powered by abundant low-carbon energy, but unrestrained growth has devastated ecosystems, endless cities and industries, depleted resources, and replaced natural habitats. So right, here comes my first apology, Marloes, is that my vision failed, maybe. And I need to look, so then I needed to look at why, you know. And if we look at why this failed, it wasn't technology. I don't think Zephyra had technology barriers that led them to this outcome. So here's where things get really uncomfortable for me. I need to confess here that I'm a mechanical engineer by training, and the rest of this presentation kind of goes into the fact that the biggest barriers we're facing are not technological, they are psychological, I think. Right, so if we look at some of these barriers, how did we get here? Right, I hope I'm not offending anyone who designed this building, because again, it was my good friend AI that came up with it. But we've got a huge responsibility as designers. You know, I think it was Yoda that said, you know, with great power comes great responsibility. And the reality is that we tend to shape our external world as a reflection of our internal world. So we really need to reflect internally and understand why we're building in the way that we are. So as the human race, we default to an egocentric view. Unfortunately, evolution has done this for us. We tend to see ourselves as separate from nature. We tend to see ourselves as superior to nature and able to exist separately to the natural world and separately to community as well. So this can create all kinds of problems, especially in the way we design our landscape. But if we stop and look at reality, the way that things really are, in fact, it's a deeply connected world. And our existence and our success is completely dependent on the success of the natural world. Our success is completely dependent on the success of the communities around us, regardless of whether those communities share your view or not. We are completely connected. So what we need to do as designers is really start to focus on how do we reinforce those connections in our design? How do we take things from an egocentric model to a connected model? How do we design to reinforce the connections with nature in our design? How do we design to reinforce the connections with people and community in our design? The next barrier I kind of looked at from a mindset perspective is what drives our decisions. And interestingly, you know, a lot more decisions than we realize are driven by unconscious factors. So we have inherent bias as well. It was great hearing Andile, for example, admitting his inherent bias of being a male, you know, in the profiles he listed. I've got many inherent biases. One of them is a past life as an air conditioning designer, right? So if you ask me to approach a commercial building and address the comfort of the people in there, my perspective is going to be, how do I air condition the space efficiently, right? Because of sustainability. That's my inherent bias. Before stepping back and asking who is in that space, what is the relationship to nature? What is the relationship to sun? What is the relationship to comfort? And do we need air conditioning in the first place? So that's a simple example, you know, of how that may play out. But obviously this can get very complex. You know, on the complex end, you can look at building a glass box in a desert. And perhaps the decisions around that aren't always driven by the fact that it's a good thing to do. Maybe it's driven deeply from a need to be seen. So we need to be aware of what's driving our decisions when we make them as designers. I think tomorrow being Black Friday is a really good time, you know, to reflect on on this behavior, because I think consumerism in general is often driven by these unconscious patterns. So right, here's psychology talk from an engineer continues. If we look past the barriers into the next slide, let's try that vision again. So what we see here is potentially a solution of mindful design. So what would a world look like if we took the time to, as designers, understand our inherent bias, be careful of the ego traps, and to design a world that is always trying to connect with nature and align with nature? Are we understanding how our buildings respond and are connected to the sun? Are we understanding how our buildings respond and are connected to climate? Ecology, whether it's local or whether it's as a result of material. We really do need to expand that mindfulness in order to achieve the vision. And technology is going to help us along this way. I believe that technology is here and it's not a barrier. But there's interesting opportunity also for technology in helping us connect those dots. We've seen great examples, for example, building simulation software and understanding, analyzing our climate, analyzing our buildings, analyzing our materials. This can be really useful in the process, as opposed to jumping to technology solutions. Okay, so my big statement, Marloes, I guess, is that in designing a regenerative future, as designers, we may need to look within and not only look external. Right. Thanks, guys.
Nice. So if this comes from an engineer, it must be true, right? But
Yeah.
I love that because it's a different way of approaching the design, and it's totally necessary. And maybe not so much on the designers, but also on the clients to vision sort of a mindful design and giving the designers the opportunity to do such great thinking.
Cool. Taking into an existential crisis, Molly.
With pleasure. Cool. Next up is Sechaba, senior lecturer at WITS and founder of Afritectuur, combines indigenous knowledge systems and experimental design to inspire alternative realities in architecture through teaching, research, and practice. Great.
Okay, thank you so much, everybody. Yeah, I tried to follow the rules and then I just ended up breaking them, Malus. Sorry. Um, it is what it is.
10 minutes is gonna be the rule though.
Yes, that one I will definitely stick to.
Okay, good.
All right, so I'm going to talk about something that's actually similar to everything that everyone spoke about. My whole talk is about visioning and, thinking about what the future could be for architecture. And I'm specifically going to talk about the cultural aesthetics of sustainability in architecture. So I'll just introduce, I'll have a quick overview, a little bit of theory, and 2 quick case studies. So the rationale behind why I'm talking about what I'm talking about. So the aim of the discussion is to explore new modes of cultural expression of so-called sustainable or green architecture in South Africa. So the image on the right, that's the Ernst & Young building, which has a 4-star green rating. And the question for me is, does this building represent a culture that attracts people to this paradigm of green buildings? So the theory that I lean on is basically the theory that talks about how people create meaning. And I draw a lot from cultural neurophenomenology, but also theories in art that talk about the way in which people create new paradigms, new meaning, and how they change from one paradigm to another. I also look a lot at theories from post-colonial theory, and especially people who were also asking questions like, for instance, Frantz Fanon and the other people from post-colonial theory, who are we as Africans going to be once we've found liberation? So the first speaker also kind of touched on this, on, who are we? What do we want? What is our vision for ourselves here in South Africa? And the last person I've got there, Spivak, she basically came up with this term, strategic essentialism, which ultimately just says that you need to come up with strategies to, sort of, in the case of green, for instance, ways of making it attractive. Let's call it that. Ways of making it attractive and recognizing how impressionable human beings are and how they will rather go to Black Friday instead of being part of something like what we're doing right now. So my argument is that 20th century modernism is understood as this movement that was about functionality and rationality, but I believe that we need to think of it differently. This thing that has basically given us the world that we live in today, all of us are now talking about climate change and sustainability because of what the 20th century has done. People have not, in my opinion, framed that movement correctly. I believe we need to frame it as a cultural movement instead of seeing it as the scientific movement. And there are architects that I believe were the leaders of this cultural movement, like this guy, for instance. His name is Le Corbusier. But what people don't know about Le Corbusier is that in order for him to be one of the people to bring about this cultural movement called modernism, he went through an artistic and creative process. The outcomes of it was this philosophy and these ideas about functionality, functionalism, etc. But the process of creating this new reality was very creative, very artistic. So he's known for somebody who paints and draws and sketches and fantasizes, basically. And that's how, he fantasized modernity into being him and other people. Another person who people don't really recognize as being someone who creates worlds is Steve Jobs. We again look at him as some sort of a technocrat, but he was the first person, for instance, to introduce a kind of social or cultural understanding of technology. I mean, for instance, this particular image where he presented the iconic iPhone, it was actually more of a cultural process that he was introducing us to. He was on stage, he kind of drew us out of our normative lives and created this whole new world, and we were sold. We wanted to be part of and buy into this new wave of modernity. And when you have an iPhone or you have whatever, you're part of this new culture. So my argument is that these two people are demonstrating to us that we need to think deeply about the way in which we create meaning And if we can create a compelling enough meaning in this domain of sustainability and architecture that can attract people so that they want to participate and see that as a reality that they want to be part of. So in my practice, this is exactly what I'm trying to achieve. I'm trying to explore an African cultural modernity in architecture. And I'm doing the exact same thing that these people were doing, going back to culture, trying to understand through art and artistic means, ways to create a world or a reality. And aesthetics comes into that very much. Aesthetics is not just about the building's going to be pink or the building's going to be yellow. It's actually talking about human perception and the way in which people are drawn to certain things in reality or in the world. I think biomimicry kind of goes into that a little bit more. But I would argue that human senses are more attracted to certain things in contemporary time today than they are to other things. I mean, people are on their cell phones so much compared to other stimuli. So my practice really is about trying to explore different aesthetic and cultural phenomena that we can draw on to create an alternative reality that is framed within sustainability that could be a bit more compelling. So the translation of this into architecture, what does it mean to be an African in the 21st century and going into the future? What is a futuristic African? So I took an image of a First Nation Khoi woman, which is on the far left. And then I took that and processed it through a generative AI tool and combined it with some of those previous images from my aesthetic explorations that I showed you, and began to generate images like this. So they sort of like, these are futuristic images. These are AI futuristic images of African people. But the materials you can see on her head, maybe that's like recycled plastic. The beads around her neck are also maybe recycled materials, but kind of creating a new language of culture that hopefully can attract people. Same thing with this woman here. Maybe the clothes that she's wearing are made from recycled materials that has been upcycled, but upcycled in such a way that we're catering to her emotional and cultural needs. And the same thing would apply to the building around. Don't ask me what it's made of. It's just supposed to be evocative. The same thing with this woman here, trying to draw us into a parallel reality or paradigm that is meant to turn people's heads away from Black Friday and towards a future that might be, more attractive. Here, it's the same kind of speculation. So I took those First Nations AI images and I put them into a contemporary sort of urban context to test out what that future could be like. So imagine a future where, yes, these look like kind of normal buildings, except they are a lot more colorful and, taking reference from those aesthetics of those First Nation people. But the idea here really, rather than just thinking of it from a functionalist point of view, is thinking of it from how do we draw people away from the current paradigm into this one? Can we use the same mechanisms that the godfathers of modernism, and even the ones of apartheid, who kind of envisaged a particular reality and paradigm, can we use those tools to envisage an alternative, even more attractive paradigm and allow that to disseminate and infuse itself into contemporary culture to such an extent that it can be an even more compelling reality? So for instance, the woman on the right, she's wearing these glowing beads. Imagine those glowing beads are a kind of digital wearable device that maybe begins to talk to you in terms of giving you certain information, or it communicates with other people, because beads originally were things that communicated with people from a cultural point of view. So I think my overarching statement would be, through creativity, we could win the cultural war for the future of our species, because I believe that what we're fighting is not a technocentric war or just an economic or commercial war. I think it's a cultural war. And that's it from me. Thank you, everyone.
Great. Thanks, Sechaba. Amazing visuals as usual. Okay, I'm going to ask all the speakers to switch on the cameras, and I'm gonna ask the attendees to have their questions ready and pull up their hands if you have any questions for these 5 presenters of today. Yes, Lisette.
Hi, everyone. I've got a comment rather than a question. Most of the speakers mentioned Black Friday. So I want to encourage you, just in case you were tempted, to go and watch a documentary on Netflix. It's called Buy Now, The Shopping Conspiracy. We think we know the impact, but this is a real eye-opener, and there's a lot of whistleblowing on ex-employees from big brands like Adidas, Apple, and Amazon. So it's definitely worth watching before, just in case you were tempted. Thanks.
Thanks, Lisette. That was a very valuable comment. I did watch it this week, and I'm certainly not buying anything for Black Friday. Any other questions? Linus.
Can I have a comment? Yeah, it's just that, Francois, 2 things. One, when I closed my eyes, I saw Wakanda, and then it was amazing because Sechaba then put up a picture of Wakanda as I saw it in my mind. So that was cool. But one minor note: with great power comes great responsibility. That's Spider-Man, not Yoda. So,
Excellent.
Yes, Nonko.
Hi, Marlus. Hi, everyone. Thanks to everyone for interesting topics. You've had me captivated the whole time. I think my question is to Liteboho, and I've been trying to make it sound like, smart, but I don't think I can. But it was interesting to hear how you said we can learn from countries like Singapore and stuff. But then you took us back to creating policy that will help us build in a way that, nature and cities together. Can you share more, like, beyond policies? Because sometimes I think there are these policies. Somebody mentioned Agenda 2063. I'm sure somewhere there we are looking at cities, and we are looking at, or they are looking at nature or nature-based solutions within cities. But beyond policies, what can a normal, ordinary citizen like me or you do to actually be more? I'm asking this because my sister lives in Soweto, and she is in a drive to buy trees or plants to plant in her garden because she says, we just don't have plants in the townships. And I love going to the suburbs because it's so green. But then, what is it that, we should be doing as ordinary citizens beyond just to have that futuristic vision that you have?
Thanks, Nonkuleko. So yes, absolutely. Policies are there to a certain extent. Singapore had the implementation wherewithal to implement their policies. So with us in South Africa, we've got some policies that direct us towards nature-based solutions in one way or another. The challenge is implementing them. And perhaps there my statement was around being more intentional about how we implement these policies and make sure that they do give us the visions that are put in those policies. But on a local, practical level, your sister, you say, lives in Soweto's buying trees to plant. There is actually an initiative by the city of Joburg that enables and provides people in townships and informal settlements to plant trees. So maybe it's about, maybe not her personally putting in that investment, because it can be a lot, but also tapping into what the city's already providing. Maybe that information is not available to anyone, and that's a challenge for the city to ensure that that information is out there. But at a practical level, yes, I would encourage people to do whatever greening initiatives they can to harvest rainwater, have a tank that's connected to your gutters and downpipes. Instead of letting the water flow into the street or your yard, reuse that water, reuse grey water. For instance, when you flush your toilets, we flush in South Africa with water that we can literally drink. And that's a complete waste. For yourself as a consumer, you're buying water to literally flush down the toilet. So things like that, we can retrofit our buildings and our homes in a way that's not too expensive, but that could be cost effective and help us in the long run. And then those kinds of savings and initiatives we can share with our neighbors and say, hey, actually, I'm spending less on water because I'm not flushing with the water that I'm buying from the city. There's, planting around, instead of having beautiful lawns that nobody ever sits on because they're too fancy to sit on, we could convert those to vegetable gardens. So there are so many little initiatives that could help green our environments and also be replicated by our neighbors, by other people within our own environments. Yeah.
Great. Thanks, Liteboho. Sarah also commented in the chat, Nonku, on your question. Pumla?
Hello. Lovely to meet everyone today. I have a question for Sechaba. I love the vision that he's having with making sustainability be more of a cultural movement. I want to have a further insight on what ideas do you have, or where have you begun implementing this as a cultural thing for everyone? Because tying into what we're all speaking of, when you want to be sustainable and we want to minimize waste, it's like Linus said, it's the informal settlements that are struggling. It's kids at end that's struggling from the floods. It's those who are in low income communities who have been told to let go of this African ideology because it's unattractive, and they are having a vision, or they're having these dreams of, no, I have to be more anti-Black to be seen as successful, to be seen as I'm doing okay. So what ideas do you have? How have you begun putting in this culture in areas where it will have the biggest impact of implementing these ways of being sustainable? Yeah.
So far my strategy has been, and it might seem strange to this group of people, but it's been in social media, because social media is quite impactful, and I'm trying to solicit social media influencers and celebrities to back this thing up, because they influence culture. Somebody talked about Coca-Cola putting a quote or something. Coca-Cola is very good at that. They know who to talk to, who to associate with their brand, and how to disseminate the culture. We have to learn from that, because these people are the ones who they're leveraging those tools, and we're not. So that's what I've started to do. And in terms of the people who are in informal settlements, low income situations, what are their aspirations? Their aspirations are to be like the celebrities, to have these Tuscan houses, to have all of these things. So, if you want to influence people to not aspire to things that are going to destroy our planet, then you have to change. You have to work with the people who they aspire to be like, in my view. So that's really been the strategy.
Linus, go for it.
Mine is more for comment, and maybe for comment from the fellow panelists, building on what Sechaba just said, and also maybe what Francois said. So when I presented solutions, we know what the challenges are, right? When I presented solutions, both of them were really, it's almost like we can't trust ourselves to make the right decision. So we have to come up with policy or measures to police ourselves, right? And so for comment from the other panelists, do you agree? Do you disagree? Do you think that we can't trust ourselves, or do you think, as Sechaba maybe alluded to, it's the culture which needs to change so that we won't need to police ourselves? I just like to throw that out there.
Thank you. Francois?
Kind of following this narrative, and Linus, your comment about Wakanda, I'm interested to know if you had to think culturally or around the mindset of Wakanda, why does it succeed? What is it that's different from our current status quo that's sending us down a path, that's not regenerative? What do you think it is that Wakanda has? What are those values that we can remember or that we can find for our regenerative future?
Am I allowed to still chat, Marloes, or must I just...
Go for it, Linus.
Okay. Okay, so the interesting thing about the Black Panther movie really was that they had this amazing renewable energy source, vibranium, right? And they're able to harness its energy powers, but they were really conservative about it. They kept it for themselves. And really the whole thing about the movie was that they had to take it to everybody else, and that the value then would be Ubuntu, right? So you need to share the knowledge, you need to share the learnings and the technology with everybody so that everybody can progress and nobody's left behind, rather than a few people being very successful. I'll leave it there.
Linus is making all the right comments. He's talking about Spider-Man and Wakanda. And funny enough, that was my comment actually, is that we are the final frontier. I mean, the AG report that's come out, I think yesterday, is outlining how the three problems that we're having is inadequate planning, coordination, and support, ineffective resource management, and a culture of no accountability and consequences. All of those are people related. It's mindset related. It's the choices we are making. And I think a lot of us are cruising through our careers, and we're making abstract this whole thing of sustainability, of a future that we want. If you want it, how are you living it every single day? And it must show, at least to yourself and to the people immediately around you. So, yeah, that was the comment I wanted to make. That we have to overcome ourselves, and we have a lot to share.
That's brilliant. I'm gonna invite all of you to come and speak on one of the webinars next year, and then you'll get a little bit more time to share your ideas. Thanks, guys, and thanks, Andile, for that really nice closing, summarizing statement. I really loved it. So I just want to take a little bit of time for the next two things. We don't do awards normally, and it's not going to be a standard thing going forward, but on this 5th-year anniversary, we thought there were two people that stood out for us over the last couple of years, and we just wanted to put them a little bit in the spotlight and show our appreciation. So the first one is the person that has been following us diligently, registering always as one of the first ones, and always attending and accessing the webinar, the first one. So we thought a nice book, Green is Not a Color. It's a really nice book, and this goes to Albertus Peels. We'll be in touch with you on your address, and then we'll courier the book to you. We really appreciate that you're still here with us, following us diligently. We really, really appreciate that. And secondly, the person, and I was hoping you would ask a question today, because that would definitely then make sense that we're doing this award, but definitely the most engaging attendee in the last couple of years is definitely Marty, and once he's got the mic, he won't stop. So thanks, Marty. Really appreciate you being with us and always asking the questions, the right questions, and keeping us engaged.
Well, thanks very much. I'll use the opportunity to say thank you very much. You would hope that I wasn't going to unmute, but yeah, no, that's an awesome surprise, and thank you so much, guys. And you guys are doing such good work. So we're all excited by the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Marty. Next webinar is in January, and we're going to talk about alien trees and mushrooms. So from invasive to innovative. Definitely going to be a very interesting one as well. Going to be some exciting, innovative ideas on what to do with alien vegetation, such as trees and mushrooms. So stay tuned. And then lastly, I want to say thank you, big thank you to the speakers. You guys were all amazing today, and it's nice to have you on this call on this 50th anniversary webinar. I loved your presentations and your contributions. Over the last 2 years, most of you have already spoken on one of our webinars, and thank you for sharing your thoughts with us, even within the rules of the game today. And then I want to close out with a really big thank you to my team. I cannot do these webinars without you. All of you are bringing so much time and energy and motivation to this organization, and I really, really appreciate it. And we're always looking for new volunteers. Even if you want to facilitate this webinar, I'm really not stuck on doing them all, so I'm happy to share my facilitator's role as well. So guys, please help us out. Yeah, any help would be appreciated, and sharing and collaboration, of course. And then lastly, remember to follow us on our socials. And with that, I'm going to close it out on the dot. Thank you for attending. Really amazing to have you all here, and have a really rejuvenating break. And I hope to see you all back in the new year, regenerated, full of energy to tackle anything that comes our way, and to create a more regenerative future. Thank you, guys.
Thank you to
Thank you.
Marloes. We really
Thanks.
thank Marloes for making it all happen. It is all
Okay.
you, really. Thank you,
No,
Marloes.
Thanks, Lisette.
Bye.
Bye.
You're a superstar. Cheers, man. Thanks, man.